What if just one missile attack could send shockwaves across the entire world in a matter of hours? Every day, nearly 20% of the world's oil supply passes through the waters connected to the Gulf of Oman. Now imagine that vital route suddenly becoming the center of a dangerous military confrontation. Reports of missiles, warships, and rising tensions have sparked fears that the region could be standing on the edge of something much bigger. But here's a question no one can ignore. Was this a limited strike or the beginning of a crisis that could reshape the Middle East and impact economies worldwide? As military forces scramble to respond and global markets watch nervously, experts are warning that the consequences could extend far beyond the battlefield. Fuel prices, international trade, and even global security could all be affected. In this video, we'll reveal 10 powerful reasons why this shocking development has the world on edge, and why the biggest concern may still be ahead. When people hear about missiles flying over the Gulf of Oman, many assume it's just another regional conflict. But the reality is far more serious. The Gulf of Oman serves as a crucial gateway to the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most strategically important waterways on Earth. Every single day, millions of barrels of oil and massive amounts of natural gas move through this narrow passage on their way to countries across Asia, Europe, and beyond. Now imagine what happens when military tensions suddenly erupt in these waters. The moment reports emerge of missile attacks, naval confrontations, or military activity, alarm bells start ringing in financial centers around the world. Shipping companies begin reviewing routes. Insurance costs for cargo vessels can rise dramatically. Energy traders start preparing for potential disruptions. Even before any actual blockade occurs, fear alone can send shockwaves through global markets. Picture dozens of giant oil tankers stretching across the horizon, carrying energy supplies worth billions of dollars. If captains believe the area is becoming unsafe, delays become more likely. And when delays affect energy shipments, countries dependent on those supplies start paying close attention. But here's where things become even more concerning. The global economy runs on reliable energy transportation. Factories need fuel. Airlines need jet fuel. Cargo ships need energy to move products around the world. When uncertainty threatens one of the planet's most important energy corridors, the effects can spread far beyond the Middle East. For ordinary people, this isn't just a story about warships and missiles. It could eventually affect fuel prices, transportation costs, and even the price of everyday goods. That's why military analysts, world leaders, and investors are watching developments in the Gulf of Oman so closely. The biggest concern isn't only what has already happened, it's what could happen next if tensions continue to rise. And as you'll see in the next reason, the impact could reach your wallet much faster than most people realize. If there's one thing that makes governments, businesses, and consumers nervous all at once, it's a sudden spike in oil prices. The moment news breaks about military tensions involving Iran and U.S. forces in the Gulf of Oman, energy markets react almost instantly. Traders don't wait for all the facts to become clear. Instead, they try to predict what might happen next. And that fear alone can move billions of dollars within minutes. Why does this matter? Because oil is far more than just gasoline for your car. It plays a role in nearly every part of modern life. Trucks delivering food to supermarkets rely on fuel. Airplanes transporting passengers and cargo depend on jet fuel. Factories manufacturing everyday products need energy to keep running. When oil prices rise sharply, those increased costs often spread throughout the economy. Imagine waking up one morning to find fuel prices climbing. A few weeks later, shipping companies are paying more to transport goods. Businesses face higher operating expenses. Eventually, consumers may notice rising prices on everything from groceries to household products. And that's exactly why investors closely monitor every development in the Gulf region. History has shown that even the possibility of disruptions near major oil routes can send markets into a frenzy. The fear of shortages often becomes almost as powerful as actual shortages. In many cases, uncertainty itself is enough to trigger significant price swings. What's particularly alarming is how quickly these reactions can happen. Financial markets operate around the clock, meaning Global responses can begin within minutes of a major incident. For millions of people around the world, a conflict thousands of miles away may seem distant at first. But when energy prices start rising, the effects can suddenly feel very close to home. And if oil markets become unstable, the next danger could be even more serious. Because military confrontations have a way of escalating when neither side wants to appear weak. Perhaps the most frightening question surrounding any missile attack is this: what happens next? History has shown that major conflicts rarely begin with a single dramatic event. More often, they start with a series of actions and reactions that gradually pull multiple sides into a dangerous cycle of escalation. That's why military experts pay close attention not only to the initial attack, but also to the response that follows. Imagine a tense situation where warships are already operating in close proximity. Emotions are running high. Commanders are under pressure. Governments are facing intense public scrutiny. In such an environment, even a small misunderstanding can quickly become a major crisis. One side launches a defensive operation, the other interprets it as preparation for something bigger. Additional military assets are deployed. Fighter jets, naval vessels, and missile defense systems are placed on high alert. Suddenly, what began as a single incident starts growing into something far more dangerous. And that's exactly what worries analysts. Neither side may want a full-scale war. In fact, avoiding a wider conflict is usually in everyone's interest. But history is filled with examples where events moved faster than leaders expected. Decisions made in minutes can sometimes shape the future of entire regions. What makes the Gulf of Oman especially sensitive is its strategic importance. Multiple military forces operate in and around the area, increasing the chances of unexpected encounters during periods of heightened tension. For ordinary people watching from around the world, military escalation might sound like a distant geopolitical issue. But larger conflicts often create ripple effects that impact global trade, financial markets, energy supplies, and international security. The real danger isn't just the missiles that have already been launched. It's the possibility that each new move could trigger another response, creating a chain reaction that becomes harder and harder to stop. And if that happens, the next consequence could affect far more than military forces. It could disrupt global trade itself. Most people never think about the cargo ships crossing the oceans every day, yet these massive vessels are the invisible engines of the global economy. From smartphones and computers to food, clothing, and vehicles, countless products travel through international shipping routes before reaching store shelves. And some of the most important of those routes pass directly through waters connected to the Gulf of Oman. That's why any military confrontation in the region immediately raises concerns throughout the shipping industry. Imagine being the captain of a cargo ship carrying millions of dollars worth of goods. Reports are coming in about missile launches, military activity, and rising tensions nearby. Suddenly, what was supposed to be a routine journey becomes a serious security concern. Shipping companies may decide to alter routes, delay departures, or wait for additional military protection. Insurance providers often increase premiums when vessels enter areas considered high risk. These extra costs can add up quickly. But the real problem is what happens when thousands of ships begin facing delays at the same time. Think of it like a traffic jam on one of the world's busiest highways. The longer the disruption lasts, the bigger the backlog becomes. Products arrive late. Supply chains slow down. Manufacturers wait longer for materials. Retailers face shortages. Consumers eventually feel the impact. And in today's interconnected world, supply chains are more fragile than many people realize. A delay in one region can create problems on the other side of the planet. This is why major shipping companies and governments closely monitor developments in strategic waterways. They understand that keeping trade flowing smoothly is essential for economic stability. The Gulf of Oman is not just a stretch of water on a map. It's a vital link connecting markets, industries, and consumers across the globe. If tensions continue to rise, the consequences may extend far beyond military headlines. The effects could ripple through global commerce, affecting everything from delivery times to product prices. And that's not the only concern. The next reason reveals why neighboring countries may soon find themselves facing difficult decisions of their own. One of the most dangerous aspects of any military confrontation is that it rarely affects only the countries directly involved. The Middle East is a region filled with complex alliances, security partnerships, and strategic interests. When tensions rise between major powers, neighboring nations often find themselves under pressure to respond in one way or in another. And that's exactly what makes this situation so concerning. Imagine being a leader in a nearby country watching missiles fly and military forces mobilize. Even if your nation isn't directly involved, you still have important questions to answer. Should military readiness be increased? Should additional defenses be deployed? Should allies be consulted about potential threats? These decisions can happen very quickly during a crisis. As tensions grow, countries throughout the region may place their armed forces on higher alert. Naval patrols could increase. Air defense systems might be activated. Military exercises could be expanded as governments prepare for different scenarios. The problem is that every new military movement attracts attention. A defensive action by one country may be interpreted differently by another. Additional ships, aircraft, or troops entering the region can increase uncertainty and create new risks. Suddenly, more players become involved, making the situation far more complicated than it was at the start. This is one reason why international leaders often urge caution during periods of heightened tension. They understand that preventing a conflict from spreading can be just as important as resolving the original dispute. For ordinary people, this may seem like a distant geopolitical chess game, but wider regional involvement can have global consequences. It can affect energy supplies, trade routes, financial markets, and diplomatic relationships around the world. The greater the number of countries involved, the harder it becomes to predict what happens next. And as the crisis grows more complex, another powerful force begins to react, one that can move billions of dollars in seconds and impact people everywhere. That force is the global financial market, and its reaction could be dramatic. While missiles and warships dominate the headlines, another battle often begins behind the scenes, inside the world's financial markets. The moment news of a major military incident breaks, investors across the globe start asking the same question: what's going to happen next? And when nobody has a clear answer, uncertainty takes over. Financial markets dislike uncertainty more than almost anything else. Investors prefer stability, predictable conditions, and clear expectations. But when geopolitical tensions suddenly explode, those expectations can disappear overnight. Imagine thousands of traders sitting in financial centers from New York and London to Tokyo and Singapore. As reports continue to emerge, they begin reassessing risks. Some investors move money out of stocks. Others rush toward assets traditionally viewed as safer during periods of crisis. This rapid movement of money can create sharp swings across global markets. Stock indexes may fall. Commodity prices may rise. Currency markets can become volatile. In some cases, billions of dollars can change hands within hours as investors react to unfolding events. But here's what many people don't realize. These market movements don't just affect large corporations and wealthy investors. They can eventually impact retirement funds, pension accounts, business investments, and overall economic confidence. When markets become unstable, the effects often spread much further than Wall Street. Business leaders may delay major investments. Companies become more cautious about expansion plans. Consumers sometimes reduce spending when economic uncertainty increases. It's a chain reaction that can begin surprisingly fast. Even if military tensions remain limited, the fear of what could happen next often becomes a powerful force on its own. Markets are constantly trying to predict the future, and during a crisis, those predictions can change by the minute. That's why economists and investors watch geopolitical developments so closely. They know that a single event in a strategic region can send shockwaves through the global financial system. And yet, financial markets aren't the only battleground of the modern world. The next threat may be completely invisible, happening not in the sky or at sea, but deep inside digital networks around the globe. When most people think about conflict, they picture missiles, fighter jets, and warships. But in today's world, Some of the most powerful attacks happen where nobody can see them. Behind the headlines and military movements lies another battlefield, cyberspace. And that's what makes modern conflict so unpredictable. As tensions rise between nations, experts often become concerned about potential cyber operations targeting critical systems. Unlike traditional military actions, cyber attacks can occur instantly, cross borders without warning, and affect millions of people who are nowhere near the conflict zone. Imagine waking up one morning to discover that banking systems are experiencing disruptions. Government websites are temporarily offline. Major companies are struggling with technical problems. Transportation networks face unexpected delays. While these issues may seem unrelated, cyber experts know that digital infrastructure can become a target during periods of geopolitical tension. The frightening part is how dependent modern society has become on technology. Everything from communication systems and financial transactions to power grids and transportation networks relies on interconnected digital systems. Even a limited cyber campaign can create confusion, disrupt services, and generate widespread uncertainty. And unlike conventional warfare, cyber operations are often difficult to trace immediately. Questions about who launched an attack, how severe it is, and what comes next can leave governments scrambling for answers. This uncertainty can amplify fear and make an already tense situation even more complicated for ordinary people. Cyber conflict may sound like something out of a Hollywood movie, but in reality, governments and security agencies around the world invest billions of dollars every year protecting critical infrastructure from digital threats. That's because a successful cyber attack doesn't need to destroy buildings to cause serious damage. Sometimes, disrupting information and communication can be just as powerful. As military tensions rise, experts know that the visible conflict may only be part of the story. And while cyber threats can create chaos behind the scenes, another battle is taking place in public view, one involving diplomacy, alliances, and international pressure, because the next major consequence could reshape relationships between countries around the world. When a major crisis erupts, the world doesn't simply sit back and watch. Governments everywhere begin calculating their next move, and that's where things can become incredibly complicated. The confrontation involving Iran and U.S. forces isn't just about two countries. It immediately grabs the attention of allies, strategic partners, and rival powers across the globe. Suddenly, leaders from dozens of nations are holding emergency meetings, making phone calls, and assessing how the situation could affect their own interests. The big question becomes, who supports whom? And how far are they willing to go? Some countries may publicly back one side, others may call for restraint and diplomacy. A few may attempt to act as mediators, hoping to prevent the situation from spiraling out of control. But every statement matters. A single announcement from a major government can influence markets, military planning, and international negotiations. The world starts looking for clues about how different nations might respond if tensions continue to escalate. Imagine a giant row of dominoes stretching across the globe. When one falls, others may begin moving as well. Defense agreements, security partnerships, and long-standing alliances suddenly become far more important than they were just days earlier. This is why international crises often trigger intense diplomatic activity behind closed doors. Leaders understand that their decisions can affect not only their own countries, but also regional and global stability. At the same time, rival powers may see opportunities to strengthen their influence or advance their strategic goals. This can add another layer of complexity to an already volatile situation. For ordinary people, diplomatic negotiations might not seem as dramatic as missile launches or naval deployments, but history has shown that decisions made in conference rooms can sometimes have consequences just as significant as those made on the battlefield. The outcome of these diplomatic efforts could determine whether tensions cool down or continue to grow. And if the crisis deepens, the next danger becomes even more serious, because history shows that misunderstandings and miscalculations can turn a tense standoff into something far larger than anyone intended. Perhaps the most frightening part of any military standoff is not what leaders plan to do. It's what nobody planned to happen. History is filled with examples of conflicts that grew larger because of misunderstandings, faulty information, or split-second decisions made under enormous pressure. In tense situations, even a small mistake can have massive consequences. Imagine a radar operator detecting an unidentified object. A military commander receives incomplete information. A routine maneuver is interpreted as a hostile action. Within minutes, decisions must be made, often without knowing the full picture. That's what makes high-tension environments so dangerous. When warships, aircraft, missile systems, and military personnel are all operating in the same region, the risk of confusion naturally increases. Every movement is being watched. Every signal is analyzed. Every action can be interpreted in multiple ways. And during a crisis, assumptions can become incredibly dangerous. One side may believe it is acting defensively, while the other sees the same action as preparation for an attack. A warning message may be misunderstood. A response intended to prevent escalation could accidentally trigger more tension. Instead, this is why military communication channels are considered so important during international crises. Governments work hard to keep lines of communication open, even with their rivals, because preventing misunderstandings can sometimes be the difference between peace and conflict. For the rest of the world, these risks may seem distant, but the consequences of a major miscalculation could spread far beyond the Gulf region. Global markets, energy supplies, international trade, and diplomatic relations could all be affected. The reality is that many of the world's most serious crises didn't begin because leaders wanted a larger conflict. They escalated because events moved faster than anyone expected. And that's exactly why experts are watching this situation so closely. Because if a single misunderstanding can create global consequences, then the final reason on our list may be the most important of all: the fact that today's world is more interconnected than ever before. At first glance, a military confrontation in the Gulf of Oman might seem like a distant event, affecting only a specific region of the world. But in reality, that's no longer how the modern world works. Today, countries, economies, businesses, and supply chains are connected more closely than ever before. A major event in one strategic location can create ripple effects that travel across continents within hours. Think about it. A disruption in energy supplies can affect fuel prices worldwide. Rising shipping costs can increase the price of everyday products. Market uncertainty can impact investments and economic growth. Cyber threats can cross borders instantly. Diplomatic tensions can influence international relationships for years. Everything is connected. That's why world leaders pay such close attention to developments in critical regions like the Gulf of Oman. They understand that what happens there doesn't stay there. Imagine tossing a stone into a calm lake. At first, the disturbance appears small, but as the ripples spread outward, they reach areas far away from the original impact point. Global crises often work the same way. What begins as a military incident can evolve into an economic challenge. An economic challenge can become a diplomatic crisis. A diplomatic crisis can reshape international priorities for years to come. And that's what makes this situation so important. The real concern isn't just the missiles, the warships, or even the immediate confrontation. It's the uncertainty surrounding what comes next. Every government, investor, military planner, and ordinary citizen is asking the same question. Will this be a temporary flashpoint or the beginning of something much larger? At this moment, nobody knows the answer. But one thing is certain. In an interconnected world, events in one corner of the globe can quickly affect people everywhere. And that's why millions are watching the Gulf of Oman so closely as this story continues to unfold. As we've seen throughout this video, the situation in the Gulf of Oman is about much more than missiles, warships, or military headlines. From the possibility of disrupted oil supplies and rising fuel prices to global shipping delays, financial market uncertainty, cyber threats, diplomatic tensions, and the risk of military escalation, the potential consequences could extend far beyond the Middle East. What makes this story especially important is the fact that today's world is deeply interconnected. A single event in one strategic region can create ripple effects that touch economies, businesses, and families across the globe. That's why governments, military leaders, investors, and ordinary citizens are all paying close attention to every new development. But perhaps the biggest question remains unanswered. What happens next? Will tensions begin to ease through diplomacy and negotiation? Or could future developments push the situation into even more dangerous territory? Right now, nobody can predict the future with certainty. Events can change rapidly, and new information can emerge at any moment. That's why it's important to stay informed, follow reliable sources, and keep an eye on how this story continues to unfold. One thing is clear: the world will be watching closely. Now, we'd like to hear from you. Do you think this crisis will calm down, or could it grow into something much bigger? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your opinion matters, and we'd love to know what you think. If you found this video informative, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest coverage of global events, military developments, and major geopolitical stories. And be sure to check out our next video, where we explore another critical flashpoint that could shape the future of international security. Thanks for watching, stay informed, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next video.